Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next edition of Supply Chain Redefined. I'm happy to invite Matt Perkins from BTB Shipping. The topic which I was thinking to talk and discuss today is about the specialty shipping. In fact, I came to know about this topic one of the posts by Matt. So then I researched more about specialty shipping and found this topic is interesting and I can bring a lot of value on the content wise to the audience. Welcome, Matt. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, thank you. And first, before we get into the topic, can you please introduce yourself and what BTB does?
Absolutely. So I am Matt Perkins, one of the owners of Business to Business Logistics. We are a third party, commonly referred to as a freight broker. We have been in operation for 13 years, and I have been in this industry for going on 26 years. I was a shipper once upon a time, managing 3 warehouses and the U.S. distribution of our product. And then I switched the aisle and went into the actual service provider side, where I've been ever since, both as a customer sales associate and now as an owner of a company.
Impressive, impressive. Before we get into the topic, we have different audiences with our channel. So we start with a very basic one, like what is specialty shipping? So how it differs from the regular shipping, like how it differs?
So I think industry people across the spectrum of logistics will consider standard shipping putting palletized freight into your standard box trailer that everyone sees going down the highways when they're on a road trip or maybe commuting to their office or back home. And that is some pretty standard stuff. The trailers are designed to fit on our roads. They're designed height wise to fit under our bridges, and they're designed to back up to a deck at a standard building. So that is like standard basic shipping. Specialty shipping comes into play when you're dealing with something that exceeds either the width of a highway lane, the height of your standard bridge, might be delivering to a unique place where they're going off-road, perhaps. Maybe there's not a parking lot or a dock, and or even weight of the load will exceed the U.S. the DOT max weight of a standard truck and freight. So anything that revolves around additional thinking and planning is what I classify as specialty shipping.
Okay. So from my understanding, what I understand is I'll see a bigger truck on the road with bigger objects like a windmill fan or blades, bigger objects, bigger machineries with one escort in the front, one escort in the back. So that's kind of a specialty shipping. One of the examples of specialty shipping.
I think that's a great example. A lot of people at this time of life are seeing windmills going down the highway, and those are very detail oriented movements because you've got a truck with a specialty trailer specifically designed to haul a windmill blade. They don't haul anything else, it's a blade, and they're followed by escorts front and back. And there's 3 blades per windmill, so there's 3 of those setups going down the highway every time a windmill moves. And then there's still I don't know the technical term, so I'll just call it the shaft. But what the windmill gets mounted to that is bolted into the ground, that is all hauled as well as special shipments because of just the sheer size of them.
Wow, this needs a very big planning and effort we need to plan because this needs a very big planning.
It does because there's a lot of rules. And as we go down our discussion today, I've got, I'll have a fun story about when you don't know the rules, as I did once upon a time, and what happens as a result. You just don't call up today and say, I need a windmill moved. And you've got all the trucks sitting there tomorrow ready to go. There is a lot of planning and coordinating because these particular trucks, and we'll get more into the weeds, I'm sure, these particular trucks can't move the way that a regular semi moves as far as time and distance and even time of day of operation.
Wow, nice. Okay, so we'll get into the next question. What are all the common examples of goods that require specialty shipping? So I assume not all the items are eligible for specialty shipping. So what are the common examples that need specialty shipping?
So, I think we hit it on the head with the windmills, of course. That is an item that requires specialty shipping. It can go as basic as shipping hazmat goods. To me, that's slightly specialized because you just don't again, you need to have some additional working knowledge than finding a truck and just hauling a load from point A to point B. There's certain questions you want to ask and certain clarities you want to have between the shipper, the receiver, and the driver. Specialty shipping can include heavy equipment, those huge high-rise cranes that put up buildings and skyscrapers in our cities. They don't haul necessarily in one piece. They get taken apart in pieces and moved. There's a lot more than people realize that I fall under the term of specialty shipping. There's even one of our current customers. They ship hot tubs, custom made hot tubs for the 1% of the 1%ers of this nation and the world. Quite frankly, we've gone international, and these things are big. They're wide. They're one piece, and they require a lot of logistics, not only in the movement through states, but also when you get to the job site, because we delivered a hot tub once that required a crane appointment to be hoisted to a roof of a high rise.
Oh, wow. That's one of the best examples. Yes.
Yeah.
And I have another question, like how like the specialty shipping is gaining more importance in today's supply chain. So why it's getting more important?
So it's getting more important because people are looking for, I almost call it the Amazon. So the Amazon, you go online, you go to Amazon, you find an item and you want it tomorrow and you get it tomorrow. So the whole shipping dynamic has changed. And I think Amazon has a lot to do with it. How that mentality and mindset translates to specialty shipping is people don't want their item delivered necessarily to a warehouse where it's easy to offload. They want it delivered where they want it delivered. Just last week, actually, we delivered basically the crude term is like an oxygen tank, but it's some kind of specialty. You step into oxygen tank for like health purposes, but this was delivering to a facility that we weren't delivering to a dock. We weren't even delivering to a garage. We were delivering to an area where it actually ended up having to be craned because of a 4-foot drop from where the truck was to the entry point of where this tank was going to go. And this was like a $60,000 tank. And, the customer wanted just to go get some temp labor, human labor, and it wasn't going to work. Just the fencing, the pathway, the clearances and everything, it required a crane to be called in to hoist it over and, back onto the ground 4 feet lower than where it started so that it could make it into the door. I think it went through a window, actually, they had to remove to get this tank in there. So it's becoming more important because, again, there's just bigger things, windmills. We'll probably use that as an example a lot today. You don't build a windmill on site. You put it together on site, but those pieces are long and single manufactured pieces. You can't manufacture a windmill blade in a cornfield in Nebraska.
It needs a lot of planning, and you need to plan in such a way that, okay, I'm starting from this place. It takes me this many days to reach the destination, and I need to have all the crane operators, everyone ready at that point. And how much time it took to unload the last oxygen tank?
So the oxygen tank, now my sales rep worked on that. He's the expert in this category. I'm just knowledgeable. It took a little while because it took convincing the receiver that they were going to have to pony up the money because cranes are not cheap versus temp labor. And so they tried the temp labor route, didn't work. They're trying to get creative to save money. And finally, my guy is like, you need to let me do what I do best. You need to hire a crane. And then it finally took. I think it took about a week though to convince the customer that yes, it's expensive, but yes, we're right. You're not getting this thing in without damaging it, and $60,000 brand new. You don't want that damaged.
Very interesting. Yes, yeah. My next question is on the technology side. So we are doing specialty shipping. We are thousands of dollars involved. It's all money. Every hour is a money. It takes a lot of time to take it from one place to another. How is technology improving in that area? So how can we improvise, or is there any scope for improvement in those areas of specialty shipping?
So as far as what's out there today, depending on its application or its need, right, with regard to technology, when we're talking about, let's say, oversized loads, there's not that I'm aware of necessarily technology that's going to make you more, efficient or whatnot when you're hauling a 12-foot wide item down the highway. That's just common sense with escorts and things like that. Excuse me. If you're talking about something that's extremely high, where bridges are a problem and pole cars are used, That technology is pretty basic. It's a pole on the front of a bumper of a car. They just have to keep their distance. Communication, of course, is important. So using walkie-talkies and everything. So, a little technology there. Where I think about technology these days with regards to like specialty shipping is in a smaller category, say food, say high theft items. There's a lot of tracking devices available now to where you can track your freight, something as basic as an Apple AirTag. So I have a customer who is in the event space and they ship, their shipments can be upwards of $1 million because it is a lot of high value cabling and lighting and AV boards, things like that. And they will slip an AirTag somewhere in that shipment. Nobody knows where except for them. And the Apple AirTag, they will always know if their shipment deviates without us having to use our technology as freight brokers, because we have technology that can tag the driver's phone with traceability with the cell phone towers, and then we know their location. But they don't rely on just that. My customer relies on their own AirTags. But there are GPS sensors, there are temperature sensors. If you have a very sensitive, high value chemical that needs to maintain a certain degree of temperature, well, not only does the reefer unit keep track of its temperatures and can be downloaded, but they can slip a temperature gauge as well, and it will be readable and tell you this broke the temperature, and it will, it could be color coded, or it could be more of a USB driven device where you plug it in and it'll run the details. And now you as a receiver know that your product stayed within spec during its whole transit, and it is a good, chemical in my example versus a compromised chemical.
And this temp logger is a live information, or you need to use your USB to download the information?
So when you're talking about the reefer unit on a trailer, it is downloadable as far as to see its history. Of course, a reefer will always show you its temperature, just like a thermostat on your house. The reefer thermostat will also show you what's going on. And there's a couple of different cycles you can set, continuous run versus interval running, things like that. As far as downloading its log, it's a download. You have to plug a computer into it, like diagnosing a car. When you're talking about these loggers, the ones that I have seen or anything that I've messed with, they're USB driven. You have to, plug it in and rip the data down from there. But there's also ones that will just show color code, kind of like when you're testing your pool for chlorine levels. These gauges will show color if they've exceeded temperature or up or down. There's also other brake sensors showing that something impacted the skid and gave it a jolt. And if you're dealing with something sensitive, calibrated, for instance, when you have a calibrated piece of machinery and it gets jolted, there could be a sensor that shows, that something happened, an event happened, and that machine might need to be recalibrated at that point.
Oh, wow, nice. My next question is on the challenges. So what are the challenges that companies face when doing especially shipping from one place to another? What are the challenges do companies usually face?
Let's first talk about the companies that actually know how to specialty ship, because that is their commodity. So take my hot tub example. So right before the Super Bowl, which will give a little foreshadowing of my story, we had a very large pool to move. It was a single piece stainless steel square pool, 40 feet long, 20 feet wide, going down the highway. Well, we had all the plans. Everything was done. All the pre-planning, the pre-trips, the routes, all picked out. Everyone knew what was going on. Everybody knew the times. Everyone knew everything, right? We had the permits pulled, everything. Driver starts driving, and then Kansas City won the Super Bowl. Well, unfortunately, our pool was going through the state of Missouri during the Kansas City parade, and Missouri, the state of Missouri shut our truck down in Topeka and said, you need to wait because we're having a Super Bowl parade and all the state troopers are allocated, all resources that would escort you through our state are now allocated to Kansas City for crowd control. You got to wait till we're done, and then we'll come and escort you through Missouri. So the truck had to park. So it's nothing my shipper did wrong. It's nothing we did wrong. Kansas City just happened to win the Super Bowl, and that threw a wrench into it. So knowledgeable shippers will face challenges, and we just have to move on, and it might impact the price. I'm rather positive we had to pay a little extra because it delayed the driver a day. We had to mess around with the permits a little, but otherwise everything was fine. The other side of the challenges are working with shippers that don't do this as their profession. They have general goods. They have maybe no goods, but then they have this one shipment of their life, and it's odd. And it's having them understand what goes into it. It's not just getting a truck. It's not calling it just getting a truck. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. And it's having the customers understand that without them thinking that it's just snapping a finger. Because a lot of people still think that trucks are easy to come by just because it's trucking. And it's not always the case, even with general goods. And it's definitely not the case when you have to add specialty shipping of any kind into the mix.
Yeah, and also like parking is a bigger challenge, right? So you cannot park everywhere. So if there is any delay, then you need to plan your parking space, where you park, and all those things. That's the bigger challenge.
Yeah, I mean, planning alone. I used to live in the Western Burbs, and there's a facility called Fermiland, and they do a lot of weird, funky experiments. I'm not even too sure. I lived there all my life. There was this component, something. I'm not a scientist, so I don't know what it was, but it was very, very large. It came in on a barge into Joliet. It was offloaded, and then it was trucked at 2 miles an hour up one of the busiest tollways in Chicago, and it could only move at night. And literally, people walked with it because the truck was moving so slow, and they had to plan its parking. And it only went, well, I don't know, 30 miles on the road. But it took like 3 days to get there, and they had to plan how they could pull off and where they could park without obstructing daily business. Because this thing moved at like, midnight. Between midnight and 5 a.m., it was moving at 2 miles an hour. I mean, that's logistics. I had nothing to do with it. I just watched it on the news.
That's really funny, right? Like, so think it's a busy highway moving very like 2 miles an hour. It's so funny.
Yeah, it was exciting. I don't like to stay up late, so I didn't go watch it myself. I saw snippets on the news.
And then my next question is on the regions and countries due to varying regulations, right? Like different countries do different regulations. So how do we keep it up, or how do we follow different country regulations and make sure we do specialty shipping on time? At the same time, we don't do anything against the laws. How do we make sure of that?
So I think, as a broker, usually that responsibility falls on other people. While I understand and know how to clear customs, let's say going into Canada, which is relatively easy, I don't physically do it. So with that being said, I think the most important advice I can give is align with those companies, those vendors that know what they're doing. A great example I have personally is we shipped gum, like literally, I think bubble gum, from the United States to a conflict country in the Middle East. And I don't know what all took place. This was not my move. It was not my customer. The end of the story was we could never prove the product delivered because the carrier we used, which is a well-known carrier, and it was no fault of their own, they could only go to the border of this conflict country and a safe country. And it was left there. But I don't believe people coordinated properly. And there's a claim that this gum never arrived to its final destination. So that was a problem in of itself. So that was a learning lesson that all the T's have to be crossed no matter what. And you need to make sure you're aligned with the right people and set the right expectations. I don't think my salesperson was aware that this freight was never going to physically make it into this conflict country. And I don't think she set the customer properly to understand that somebody better meet them at the border of the safe country in order to bring it physically over, because it's going to stop here and it's not going here. And, as a result, the product was lost, stolen. I have no idea what happened with it, but that's where things can go wrong really quick.
That sounds scary, right?
Yeah. I forgot which country. Well, I mean, this was 11, 12 years ago. I want to say the safe country was Egypt, and it was a bordering country to Egypt. So
Nice. So the next one is on the hazardous materials. So like we do a lot of hazardous shipping through specialty shipping. What are the special things that we need to plan when we ship something hazardous? Because something might be flammable or kind of a aerosol or highly explosive material. So how do we need to be very cautious on transporting those inventory from one place to another place?
well, it depends on the modality that you're using. So commonly with hazardous, we're moving it via trucks over the road. So the big things you need to be aware of would be the number one, the placards. First and foremost, the paperwork. Have the right placards so that when the DOT pulls you over and you hand them paperwork saying you have X hazmat on board, that the placard matches the hazmat. So that's super important. Making sure that the shipper has them, either one by their own acquisition or the person wanting the product or whatever shipping them. I think us as brokers, I think there's a lot of freight brokers out there that don't validate this, and they just assume the shipper will have it, or they assume the driver will have it, and that is a very dangerous assumption. Not every driver that is hazmat endorsed has a stack of placards ready to go. Not every trailer has those flip placards that you commonly see. So I think hazardous is among the easiest when it comes to defined specialty shipping. Just making sure the paperwork is signed right, making sure that the placards are right, making sure that the driver's hazmat, endorsed. And not just that, but making sure the carrier has hazmat insurance. And then as a hazmat carrier, like I could be a truck driver today with my hazmat endorsement, meaning I've gone through the training, I passed certification, I got the indication on my license, right? My CDL. And, I'm working for a carrier that ships hazmat today, but tomorrow I quit and I go to another trucking company. Now, just because I have my hazmat does not make that carrier hazmat endorsed. I'm a hazmat carrier, but I cannot haul hazmat if the carrier that I'm working for does not have their hazmat designation as well. So that's the legality of it. And then the other thing is the operation of it when it comes down to transporting and trucking. Not every road is allowed to be traveled with a hazardous load. The common points will be your interstates that go into the city. So the common one I can talk about, because I drive it all the time, going from Tennessee to Illinois, is Indianapolis. You're not allowed to stay on 65 unless, of course, you're going into the city for a delivery. But if I'm going from Knoxville here to Chicago, my office, and I've got a hazardous load for whatever reason, I can't drive through 65, even though it's the quicker route. I cannot go through town. I have to take 465 and bypass around. Same thing goes for here in Tennessee, right by me. There's a road, it's Highway 2025, I think, and there's a tunnel. Now, I've never seen this tunnel myself. It's not in any of my path of travel, but on the highway, it says hazmat loads cannot use this road. So clearly it's a truck route, but it's not a truck route for hazardous trucks because they can't go through there because of the tunnel. Because if, God forbid, there's an accident in that tunnel and it was something explosive, that's probably a bad day.
And one basic question though, so during the transit, how do you refuel the trucks? Because you cannot go into a gas station and fuel it, right? Fuel your trucks. How do you refuel your trucks?
No, the hazmat loads still go in fuel.
Okay, but if trucks with bigger items, like if you have anything like bigger objects, you carrying it. So how do you refuel it, the trucks?
That's a great question. I don't even think I can answer that one. I've never owned a truck. And when we organize and do everything, at the end of the day, as brokers, we're a service provider. We help bring another level of knowledge to the process of moving it, but the nuts and bolts in the actual operation, that's more on the driver. So yeah, in our case of the 20-foot pool, I'll be bluntly honest, I don't know how the driver refueled along the way. He might have been able to pull into a pump, but then he probably had to back out because if he kept going, he was going to take out that whole island. So I'm guessing that you pull in and you just back out. You just use extreme caution. You've got the escorts there to help you, and it's an orchestrated event, but it can be done.
Nice. My next question is on the future. So maybe before we get into the future, we can do what are all the business? What should business look when looking for a right specialty shipping handler? So, for example, like BTB, what BTB offers specifically when doing the specialty shipping? How do you differ with the other competitors which you have, and what are the things that the customer should look for?
I think first and foremost, the customer should ask the question if their provider has ever even done this. Do they already have this? In this day and age, and it's been going on for decades, of course, customer decision makers of shipping product, whether it be standard shipping or specialty shipping, they get bombarded by people like me 5 to 10 times a day at this point, is what I hear. That's the statistic today. So the question first and foremost is, do you even ship this product, or are you just calling me off of a list? Don't just give your product to somebody because you like the sound of their voice and they sound knowledgeable. Have they shipped this? A great example is I had a gentleman reach out to me because he took on more than he could chew. He took on it was a simple oversized load, not even dramatic. We're talking oversized enough to be placarded, the banner that says wide load, but not even wide enough that it required escorts. But he couldn't find any trucks because he can't speak the language with confidence. He spoke it apparently confident enough for the shipper to give him a chance, but then he could never find a truck, and he couldn't find the truck for the rate because he had no idea how to market it. And then whereas I have a specific guy in my office, and that this is what he does. I mean, currently we're quoting on a significantly large shipment. One of the pieces alone weighs 200,000 pounds and requires 19 axles. I mean, it is ginormous. And, the transportation bill alone is $1 million. But we know how to do it because we have done it already. We don't have the assets, but we know how to communicate with the drivers. We know how to line it up. Whereas this other gentleman couldn't even find a truck for a reasonable rate to ship a basic oversized load, which is entry level in our. Right now, my specialty guy is shipping houses down to the Florida Keys, floating houses. They're shipping 3 pieces, and he just knocks it out in his sleep. So that's the thing is, don't align with somebody just because they sound good. Ask them if they actually know what they're doing. I can't put enough emphasis behind that. Don't give your freight to somebody who's new, who has never shipped us a day in their life.
Because experience is the key here, right? Like even a small mistake will lead to a catastrophic failure of may get stuck somewhere or it may get damaged. So it's very expensive. So a proper experience is required.
Yeah, I mean, you take so this particular that example I just gave, that $200,000 piece of equipment we're looking to move. The last time that a project like that moved, the carrier screwed up the permits. That screw up of miscommunication and not foreshadowing cost my prospective client that I'm working with $150,000.
Wow, it's a big money. Wow.
Mistakes are very expensive via damage, via cash, however you want to look at it. Mistakes will cost dearly when you enter into specialty shipping.
Perfect. My next question is, how do companies mitigate risks involved in any kind of specialty shipping like delays or damages? Recently, there was an incident where the specialty shipping was damaged in transit and the company was fined with a hefty fine. So from the customer. So like how do companies mitigate those risks?
The best way is through the pre-plan. Take pre-planning serious, plan properly. Some plans will take longer than others. The project I'm working on, again, for example, does not ship until Q1. And already we're kind of like at this point where I'm pushing for answers from my customer if they're going to commit to my quote, because it's going to take all of Q4 for us to pre-plan what is really just a load that's going about 400 miles, only across one state line. But that alone will take 3 months of planning. Whereas that pool I told you in the previous example crossed 5 states, 7 total, origin and destination, and 5 states in the middle. And, it didn't take anywhere near as long to plan out because of its, lack of weight and its size and things like that. So, that's one way to mitigate risk, is just have a realistic timeline to build your transport plan. The second would be in transit. I mean, if changes happen, you're going to have to adapt to a change. An example we're talking about here, it sounded like the route was deviated because it had to be. Curveball was probably thrown from the original plan. So then the question becomes, do you just still go business as planned, or do you have to change everything? Which I would say you have to kind of change and maybe put a pause on the truck and say, let's put this truck to the side. And now let's replan this route real quick on the fly and see what we have to do to change that up, versus just saying, we're going to go until we can't go. Because, again, we're only speaking in hypotheticals. We weren't part of that shipment, but did they just go and figured, hey, we got the pole truck, we'll let the pole truck do its work, and then there was a failure, and it's going to be a costly failure.
That company was paid a very hefty fine, and it was bigger issue. It's a big issue actually. And my final question: what is the future of this specialty shipping? How is the future looks like, and what do you envision, and what BTB is planning for the future?
So the future is kind of interesting depending on the commodity, right? Windmills will always be transported, special trailers and everything change. The idea of specialty shipping can be so wide. It can be even something like final mile deliveries. That becomes special. You're delivering in someone's home. It takes a whole nother set of standards to deliver in a home. I think it's going to continue to grow, especially in, like, say, the retail segment of final mile. You have a lot more distributors doing things direct to consumer versus business to consumer. Take mattresses. You can now buy mattresses, online. You don't have to go to those mattress stores, and they show up a little differently. You got to unpack them versus just roll in a new mattress flat, through a door. It's now they're in small boxes. I think as more specialized things are created, items are created, it just will continue to introduce, again, the Amazon effect is going to introduce the on demand, I want it my way, and it's going to just continue to require specialty shipping and just adoption of that. When it comes to trends or technologies, I wouldn't say I'm a great expert at that. So I'm not too sure what will come of technology to make it easier. I think as mapping programs evolve and get better, it might be a lot easier to plan safe routes. But even then, we can plan all day long through technology. But when you're dealing with something that could be, 14 feet tall and power lines are a problem, you can never underestimate or undervalue the scouting process of a specialty shipping on big items, because you don't know when a highway is going to go under construction. You don't know when a storm. I mean, look at what we're dealing with here in East Tennessee. Interstate 40 is wiped out. It does not exist right now. You cannot drive from my house to the beaches of South Carolina via Interstate 40, and you won't be able to for a year. I just read that the other day. It will be closed until September of 25. So now, what do? Now it's a whole new route, and you wonder how many oversized loads were destined. Were they even going to go down 40? I don't even know if that's a safe route when you go through the mountains, but let's just say it is. And let's say oversized loads are going down 40. Now you got to redraw that entire roadmap and take 40 out of it, and that is. That's still a human part. That's still manual because things change.
That changes the whole plan, right? Like you need to plan a different route and plan for the extra days, extra labor, extra handling. A lot of things involved.
Absolutely. A lot of changes will come of that highway being closed for the next year. I can assure you that. Even my vacation plans will change. I got to drive through Atlanta now if I want to go to Hilton Head. So
yeah, come to Atlanta. Right.
I've done it a lot. So my child plays soccer, so a lot of soccer tournaments in North Atlanta.
Thank you so much, Matt, for your time. And it was a very good session. I really loved it, and I thoroughly enjoyed the topic. And thank you so much for your time. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you having me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.